What if like a shark comes to attack and then the whale comes up and eats the shark and then the shark's attack?
No, you go. Let's go.
Started this campaign with a large group of people. We set out to petition Maggie Hassan, then governor, to request a task force from the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management to investigate the potential of offshore wind in New Hampshire and eventually start the leasing process. We delivered over 1,000 petitions to Maggie Hassan, but unfortunately she left office before she took action. So then, along the campaign trail for the next governor, we had folks who asked Chris Sununu if he would be willing to request this task force to investigate offshore wind once he was elected. He said if there's community support for it, then I'm not going to stand in the way, and that he would request the task force. So then he was elected. We had to go out and show him that there was strong community support for renewable energy and for offshore wind. So we started passing resolutions around the state, and we passed over 20 resolutions around the state to bring offshore wind to New Hampshire and to support 100% renewable energy in our state. On top of that, we've had dozens of businesses sign on to give support and lots of legislators sign on to give support. So we're here today to kind of show once and for all, definitively, that there is a large amount of community support for offshore wind and that we need our governor to act. We are in the midst of a climate crisis, and the answer is renewable energy. And right here in New Hampshire, that looks like offshore wind. So thank you all so much for coming out today. We have some wonderful speakers lined up, but we're going to start off by just having the wonderful Sylvia here talk a little bit about Earth Day and the history of Earth Day.
We stand here today, as Griffin said, to bring a reasoned plea
Closer.
to our governor.
Closer.
We stand for renewable energy. We stand for what? Renewable energy! Again! Renewable energy! Again! Renewable energy! The first Earth Day in 1970 mobilized more than 20 million Americans. They poured into the streets of every major American city and demanded change. It remains the largest citizen action event in human history, and it created massive political momentum that led to today's environmental laws to safeguard clean water, clean air, protect endangered species, and stop hazardous waste pollution. 48 years later, the Earth needs the same mobilization and momentum. We need decisive action, and we are making our message clear. It's up to us to bring renewable energy to New Hampshire. Many who stand here today have taken this shoulder-to-shoulder feeling of being public and accountable together as an act for the well-being of the world. As we stand, we reach for our common humanity, no matter our difference. We've combined human rights and environmental justice and named it climate justice. We remember to make Earth Day every day, connected to the planet as a whole, clear that our entire lives are lived in thanks for this planet. The Earth's soul is our own. And we stand together today to remember to keep on moving forward. Thank you for standing with us today to celebrate the Earth and the power of wind and wind energy. Go!
So much. So we're going to have our first speaker, Clarise, come up and just tell a little bit about her story as a scientist as well as an activist.
Student in the Earth and Environmental Science Department at the University of New Hampshire. And I moved to New Hampshire from Ohio in the heart of coal country to study how climate change impacts the Arctic. But really I came to Concord today to tell you a story about a very small moment in my life that has impacted how I think about science, probably forever. I was on my way to an 8 a.m. lecture, my senior year of college, when I saw 5 words on a whiteboard that I've thought about almost every single day since that moment. And those words said, why can't scientists be activists? And I'd never really given that idea a lot of thought. You know, in college I would sign a petition if you asked or join a walkout, but if you had told me that someday I would come speak at a rally in front of a state house in a place where I'm not really from, as someone who people consider an organizer, I would have maybe laughed at you, just because I've had this idea conditioned into me that somehow science is sterilized from the world of politics, and that somehow scientists' motivations and their curiosity are removed from what's going on in the world, which is very not true when I think about the scientists that I know. Because while, you know, as a scientist, I'm very happy when I'm in the lab, and it's just me and my samples, or me and my data, or like I'm in the field for so long that I sink into the mud and I try to move and my boots come off my feet, like that's a perfect day for me. As someone who studies the Earth, I know that the things that I study intimately impact and are impacted by humans. And the issues that I'm really passionate about are intimately human issues. Climate change, food security, clean water, public health. And so as scientists, we can't be content to stay in the lab all the time, because our results and our data have real meaning for people. I've been lucky to travel to the Arctic a few times now, and I'm getting to go back for a 3rd and 4th time this summer to study how permafrost thaw is changing year to year, and what that means for carbon emitting into the atmosphere. And it's been alarming to see the changes that can happen on just a few years, because I know how much carbon is stored in those soils if that permafrost thaws that could be released. But, to be clear, there's way more carbon in fossil fuels that currently the U.S. is poised to emit if we stay on the track of energy that we've been going on for decades. And that's what's really driving climate change. And that's why I can't be content to stay in the lab anymore, because I know how the energy decisions we make in New Hampshire don't stay in New Hampshire. They impact places like the Arctic and the people who live there, but also the impacts of energy aren't always that so far-flung. When we think about upcoming proposals like Granite Bridge Pipeline, which would involve fracking in the Marcellus Shale, there are real communities there that will be impacted by extraction. And there are real communities in Cancer Alley in Louisiana that are impacted every day by refining of fossil fuels. And you know, while I love the data and I love doing science, it's really the stories of people behind that data that drive me to do the kind of work I do. And it's the stories and the real communities behind the data that make me need to come out into the world and not just be a scientist. And you know, I've been really lucky growing up in an age where I have great examples of scientists who have decided that they can't be content to be just scientists. I grew up looking up to people like Rachel Carson, who's like revolutionary work on DDT helped create the EPA, and James Hansen, whose testimony to Congress made climate change a national issue. And now, as a young scientist, I get to see campaigns by women like Jess Phoenix and Rosa Calderon and Mindy Mesmer, who have taken this lead to bring our national energy policy into the future, into renewables, because we know that's the just thing to do, socially, economically, environmentally. And I'm inspired by these scientists who have taken this call. But it's also not just scientists who can do this, right? You don't need to have a PhD to see how climate change is impacting our winters in New Hampshire. You don't need a degree to see the flooding that is occurring more and more often on 1A, to see the news stories about communities that are impacted by extraction and refining, and to see the beginning of climate migration. And so you don't need to be a scientist to move on climate. We all know the solution is renewables, and we know that we have the power and the skill and the will to move forward on renewable energy. And I know that New Hampshire is ready for offshore wind, right? Are we ready?
Yes.
And I know that New Hampshire is ready for 100, right? And Governor Sununu said that if we showed him that we are ready for offshore wind, that we are ready for 100, right, that he would do something about it if we're showing our support. And we've been here showing our support, and we're here again showing our support, and we will be here again and again until action is taken. I read this wonderful tweet by Dr. Sarah Meyer, who's a paleoclimatologist at the University of Washington, but also an incredible advocate for climate justice. And she tweeted the other day that climate action requires radical listening, and it requires grace to move past the paralysis and the grief that watching climate change unfold can have. And so it's time for the state government to radically listen, because we've all been radically dreaming about what climate justice actually looks like in action, and we're ready for it. I'm going to pass it off to Chuck. Thank you all for coming out today. Happy Earth Day.
Hello, everyone. I am Chuck Welling, and I am a member of the Concord Energy and Environment Committee, and I am here to tell you about an exciting initiative that we're working on. First, a little bit. A movement toward 100% renewable energy is growing. It's called Ready for 100. The movement is being led at the local level. Over 60 towns and cities across the United States have already committed to 100% renewable energy. And they will get that energy by 2050. Of these 60 towns, 3 of them are located in New Hampshire. Hanover committed to this ambitious energy goal at its town meeting by popular vote in May of 2017. Just this past March, a month ago, Plainfield and Cornish committed to the same goal during their town meetings. So the people are want to move toward 100% renewable energy. But it's not just cities and towns. Many large companies are also making the transition to 100% renewable energy. Among them, Apple, Microsoft, Google, and long-standing companies like Kellogg's and Walmart. Some of the momentum comes from President Trump's decision to withdraw from the Paris Climate Agreement. We know that we cannot wait for the federal government to take action on climate change. So there is a grassroots movement growing to address climate change at the local level, and we want the city of Concord to be part of it. Do you think the city of Concord should move toward 100% renewable energy? The Concord Energy and Environment Committee has made a proposal to the Concord City Council, and this is the proposal. The city of Concord will adopt a goal of 100% renewable energy across electricity, thermal energy, and transportation. And that goal will be community-wide, not just city government energy consumption. And we will achieve the electricity goal, 100% renewable electricity, by 2030, and we will achieve the thermal energy and transportation goals by 2050. This proposal is before the City Council, and they will vote on it at their next meeting in May. We want to achieve our goal in a way that is just, equitable, affordable, and accessible to everyone in the community. We want to engage everyone in the Concord community to help us achieve this goal in the years to come. We need everyone's help. If you live in Concord and you agree that Concord should move to 100% renewable energy, here's what we would ask you to do. Please attend the City Council hearing on May 14th at 7 p.m. at City Council Chambers, just a couple of blocks away here, to show the City Councilors that you support 100% renewable energy for Concord. In addition, if you are so inclined, please reach out to your City Councilor before that hearing and let him or her know that you support this goal. Please also put up a yard sign. We have yard signs over next to the Sierra Club table to my right. And please share our Facebook event page. It's entitled City Council Vote on 100% Renewable Energy for Concord. That's a mouthful. If you get some of the words right, I think you'll find it on Facebook. And bring your family and friends to join you on May 14th. There are other ways you can help as well to get Concord to commit to 100% renewable energy. If you go to the Sierra Club's table right over there by Allie and Kathy, we will let you know how. Let's make a difference on climate change right here in Concord. Thank you very much.
I'd love to invite Sylvia, wherever she is, to come back up and read some wonderful poetry about Earth Day and talk a little bit about the beautiful words that she has prepared for us. Here she comes.
In the spirit of this gift that we want to harness, I'd like to read a tribute to the wind. It's by Lyle Watson, and it's called Blessed Be the Wind. Without the wind, most of the earth would be uninhabitable. The tropics would grow so hot that nothing could live, and the rest of the planet would freeze. Moisture would be confined to the oceans, and all but the fringe of the great continents would be desert. There would be no soil and no relief from suffocation. But with the wind, Earth comes truly alive. Winds are the circulatory and nervous systems of the planet, sharing energy and information, distributing warmth and awareness, making something out of nothing. All wind's properties are borrowed. Our knowledge comes secondhand. Here is a mystery, a force that cannot be understood, but has an undeniable existence. This was our first experience of the spiritual, the wind. We are the fruits of the wind. We have been seeded, irrigated, and cultivated by its craft. So Lyle Watson, thank you to him. And I'm also told that the Hebrew word wind means breath and spirit. The Navajo also have an amazing image of the wind. It's seen in the skin at the tips of our fingers. They have a chant that says, "See the trail of the wind at the tips of our fingers." It shows where the wind blew when our ancestors were created. So on this Earth Day, we make this call to action for offshore wind in the spirit of so many. And I have one more poem that I love because I love Piercy. Does anyone know Marge Piercy? Yeah. She's an amazing poet and a social justice warrior. And because our work to bring renewables is for climate justice, I think this is the thing. It's called the low road. Alone you can fight, you can refuse, you can take what revenge you can, but they roll over you. But two people fighting, back to back, can cut through a mob. A snake dancing file can break a cordon. An army can meet an army. Two people can keep each other sane, can give support, conviction, love, massage, hope, sex. 3 people are a delegation, a committee, a wedge. With 4, you can play bridge and start an organization. With 6, you can rent a whole house. You can eat pie for dinner with no seconds and hold a fundraising party. 12 make a demonstration. 100 fill a hall. 1,000 have solidarity and your own newsletter. 10,000 power and your own paper. 100,000 your own media. 10 million your own country. It goes on one at a time. It starts when you care to act. It starts when you do it again after they said no. It starts when you say we and know who you mean. And each day you mean one more. Thank you.
Would love to invite Renny Cushing up here to talk a little bit about his experience with offshore wind. He's really been involved in this fight since the very beginning, and I'm not going to try to summarize that because he's about to come here and tell you about it a whole lot better than I can.
Thank you, and thanks everybody for being here. I'm Renny Cushing, and I'm a state representative from Hampton. And a few years ago, the owners of the Seabrook nuclear plant wanted to get an extension of their license. And the local environmental organization, the Seacoast Anti-Pollution League, thought that before that plant was relicensed, there should be an examination of alternative energy sources, one of them being offshore wind. But for reasons beyond my comprehension, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and our federal government decided we shouldn't look into those any other alternatives. So 4 years ago, I sponsored legislation to establish a study committee to look into the opportunities for offshore wind off the coast of New Hampshire. Our Atlantic seaboard, off our Atlantic coast, is a virtual Saudi Arabia of wind in terms of energy potential. And stretching from the Gulf of Maine all the way down to the Carolinas, there's enough energy that's blowing in the wind that's waiting to be tapped to power our entire eastern seaboard. After 6 months of study, the study commission that was bipartisan, that looked at what was being done in other places, came to the conclusion to recommend that the state of New Hampshire should undertake, in collaboration with the Bureau of Offshore Energy Management, an examination, assessment of the potential for offshore wind in the Gulf of Maine off of our coast. A recommendation was made for the next legislature to move forward with that. Unfortunately, nothing happened in 2015. Unfortunately, in 2016, nothing happened. In 2017, nothing happened. We seem to have a mentality here in the State House that we ought not look into offshore wind, maybe because we find it and it would make other options that are for energy obsolete and unwanted. So I'm glad that we have, for 350 and that all the organizations that have been mobilizing to try to gather petitions, to bring to the attention of the governor, who ultimately makes this decision about whether to initiate this process, that there's citizen support for this. And I just want to thank everyone for doing that. Unfortunately, again, this year the legislature said that they did not want to ask the governor to have an offshore energy wind task force, but hopefully it'll happen very soon with the governor. Clean energy. There are 2 people here, Marge Shepardson and Bob Backus, who sit on our Science, Technology, and Energy Committee, who are going to share with you some of, maybe we're going to call it the lowlights of our current energy policy in the state of New Hampshire, and offer some inspiration for what we can do when we make some changes. Bob and Marge.
Thank you, Renny. I'm Bob Backus from Manchester State Rep.
Closer, Mark.
Renny is, I always refer to Renny as my hero for many reasons, but leading the fight against the Seabrook nuke is certainly high among them. Just recently, the Governor's Office of Strategic Initiative used to be called the Office of Energy, but for some reason they didn't want the word energy in there. Changed to Office of Strategic Initiatives. Released an update to the 10-year energy plan. And this wasn't an update, folks. This was a total rewrite of the state's energy priorities. I can tell you a few things about this plan, but it calls for reducing our support for renewables. It calls for reducing our support for renewables. Think about that as we're here to promote renewables as the answer to our environmental and really our energy cost problems as well. It suggests the Seabrook nuke should be declared a renewable resource and credited toward meeting our renewable goals. It suggests that we should it doesn't suggest, it says we should put people in car seats instead of in railroad cars. I mean, think about that. And I can tell you that this energy plan followed a whole series of stakeholder meetings with folks around the state, and lots of comments were made and lots of participation, and none of it was supported in any degree. This energy plan. So I hope you'll get this thing. It's available online at the Office of Strategic Initiatives. Take a look at it and let the government know, and particularly the governor's office, know how you feel about it. How do we get such a thing? Well, the people who were the principal authors of this know less about energy than any of you here. They are political people. They worked on political campaigns. One was a staffer for Senator Ayotte. They do not have degrees or experience other than in the newly formed Energy Office of Strategic Initiatives, and that's how they can come up with this thing. So, it's a big step back, folks, and I urge you to let your voices be heard on this, because it's supposed to inform legislators and public policy in the years to come, and it's a definitely retrograde, and is frankly appalling. Clean energy.
I'd just like to second what Bob said. I'm Marge Shepardson. I know that the hearing that I went to before they rewrote the energy plan, one of the public hearings, which was very well attended, had many of us saying the new energy plan should have more renewables in it. It should have measurable goals in it, like 25% by 25. We should know what we're aiming for, and then we'll know how to get there. It has none of that. It took that out and made it worse. So I do hope, as Bob said, that you'll look at it and then you'll make your voices heard to the governor and to your senators and representatives. And what I would most like to point out is there's an election coming in November. Please get people out to vote. Thank you.
The governor's office actually did not respond. Well, they did respond. They said they weren't going to come. So Chris Sununu unfortunately wasn't able to make it today. But here in this folder, we have letters from individuals, businesses, towns, and representatives about how important it is to be pursuing offshore wind and renewable energy. So I'd like to ask these representatives here if they would be willing to pass along these letters to the governor as soon as they can.
Well, Marge will handle it tomorrow.
Gladly do it.
Thank you for organizing this.
Fantastic. And now I would really love for everyone to grab a sign and come on up here. We're going to take a big group picture with everyone right in front of the steps. There's lots of signs planted in the ground around this space here.